Hello everyone. Can you guys hear me? Can someone type in the question section? Yes or no? Perfect. All right. Uh, Welcome back. This is Rakesh Malakar again from the Student IT Architecture Competition. We have today UX and UI architecture presentation, and our presenter is Kamal Agarwal from Microsoft. And if you have any questions, just type it in the question. I'll read it to Kamal, and then he can answer the question to you. With that said, Kamal, take it away.
Thanks, Rakesh. Thank you everyone for joining the call today. I hope you already had chance to join some of the previous webcasts, so you know like how these webcasts go and what you need to do. I will just go through like couple of housekeeping items. So just make sure if you have any questions, either you can raise your hand, there is a button in there, or you can also type in the question. Rakesh is there who will help to go through those questions and will make sure that we will address those questions. So as Rakesh mentioned, my name is Kamal Agarwal. I live in Redmond, Seattle area. I work for Microsoft. I'm here in this area from about 20 years, working in computer industry from like about 25 years so far. At Microsoft, I work in the end user services group, where our primary focus is end user experience, both internal customers to Microsoft and external customers to Microsoft. So the user experience and user interface architecture is one of the core component for our group. There are many different ways how people think about user experience and user interface, and there are many similarities as well. So many times people get confused about these two terms. So let's start by just looking at the differences between user experience and user interface. So if we look at the user interface, basically the user interface is a place where the user interacts with the system. So if you look at it, the user provides an input to the system. System do some processing and look at that information, and at the end, system provides some output to the users. Now, the key point here is that whatever the system and interface does, it should be focused on completing the task and producing the outcome which user is looking for. It should be effective. It should be efficient. Means it should not. So users have a mindset like how long it can wait, and it should be efficient enough so that it provides the satisfactory result for the user. And then make sure that the look and feel of your design of your UI is well built, which is user centric, right? Now, when we look at the user experience, the user experience is much bigger in terms of it tracks the end-to-end experience of the user for the whole experience. So basically, it increases the customer satisfaction and loyalty. So if we take an example, let's say you are walking in front of a store and you see a window and you like an item in the store. Now, when you like the item, you normally go inside the store and start looking around. Now, when you walk inside the store, let's say there is a store representative who comes to you. He smiles at you and then he asks you, "How can I help?" And right now, because you are just looking around, you might say that, "No, I'm fine. I'm just looking around." and then you go inside the store, you look at a couple of items, and then after a couple of items you find the same item which you looked at outside, which you really liked, and then you can pick up those items, you can touch and feel and try those items, and after there might be some more description, more information about that item, and let's say you like the item. Once you like the item, you go uh, to the checkout desk. At checkout desks, there is a person who looks at you and he helps you to complete the transaction. He takes your credit card, you swipe your credit card, and the payment goes through. You take your item and you come out of the store. Now, if you look at this whole end-to-end scenario, this end-to-end scenario is the full user experience. Now, if we look at just user interface, there might be 2 or 3 user interfaces where you interacted. First one is the outside of the shop, the window where you looked at the item. When you went inside the store, you saw a couple of displays where some items are there. That's another example of user interface. When you swiped your card, that is another user interface where the the credit card machine accepted your credit card and a PIN, and it charged the transaction on your account. So those 3 or 4 places where you have interacted with the user interface, but the rest, all the whole experience of this shopping is the user experience. The another example we can look at it for user experience is the Apple. Now I remember when I started using the Apple phone initially, we had to specify the PIN or user ID and password to log on to the phone. Then later on, in iPhone 6, there was thumb scanner where you can just scan your thumb and you can just log in to your phone. So much better user experience. You don't have to type in your password every time you want to log in. And now with iPhone X, it has a face recognition. So you can just put your phone in front of your face and phone recognizes you and logs you on. So you don't even need to touch your thumb or on the phone. You can just pick up your phone and it automatically recognizes you. So that's the user experience where you can see like how it evolves and it helps user with the end-to-end scenario. Okay, so there are different uh, there are different designs for user experience and different way like how people interpret it. But mainly, if you sum it up, there are 5 different elements for user experience design. The first element is information architecture. So information architecture mainly focuses on the content. In the content, basically, you are focusing on 3 things. You are focusing on the business scenario because you are building some solution. So you want to make sure that you are working to solve some business problem. Normally, you are trying to sell some product or services. So that's the second piece of information. And third is your customer and customer satisfaction. So when you put all of those things together, you basically collect the information for these 3 information and how that information interact with each other. So that is the piece which you build as part of the information architecture and store it into some system. The next piece comes is the interaction design. Now, in the interaction design, basically, how is the system response to the user interface? Now in the interaction design, you can look at the different layout patterns, like how the layouts look like of the UI. You also look at like different screen sizes. So if user moves from, let's say, a mobile phone to a laptop to a desktop, how does he interact with those different screen sizes? So those are the components of interaction design. You also look at the different behavior, like when people are dragging and dropping the items or mouse over So if you are using, let's say, the laptop and you have a mouse attached to it, in your UI, you might have a component where when you mouse over to a particular button or particular item, it shows you some information. Now, when you move to a different screen, for an example, let's say cell phone, where you don't have mouse, there is no mouse over event. So while you are developing the interaction design, you have to be careful about looking into each of the different input devices and screen sizes and make sure your design supports all of them. You also want to focus on like help and support. So if the user is stuck at some particular place, then how your system is going to help them. For an example, you might provide some tooltips. So if you have some information on the UI which user is not able to understand, it can provide a tooltip information with more description. You might have like some kind of chat or call option where if the user is stuck and he should be able to just type in some information in the chat box, and you have a rep who can help out. So depending on your system, you need to think about all of the interaction you are going to have with the users. Okay. The next item comes is about the usability design. So usability design is more about user mindset. So you need to understand about what the user want and what the user is looking for at the place of adding the features based on just business requirements. Now to look at the usability design, there are multiple ways how you can do it. Usability study is one of the big thing where you might create like some prototypes, and then you can use those prototypes to demo it to the users, where users can come in, they can try it out, just some of the scenarios, and you just observe them how they are using it, and based on those observations you can try and figure it out, like which components are working well and which components need some kind of modification. And it's a iterative process. So based on the your usability study and their results, you might go back and modify your designs. The other thing you can do is you can do the surveys. So for an example, you can create the mock-up of designs and do survey to your users to understand if that's something they are looking for. The another thing, another method of usability design is just following the users. So if users have some existing solution which they are using or a manual method, you just go and observe them how they currently do it, which helps you to design your new user interface for them. So usability design is a very important element for making sure that you are building a satisfactory product for the user. Then prototype is basically something you build which is not a final product, but it is kind of an iterative product. So it has most of the element or most of the critical element you want to built as part of your solution, but it doesn't have to be completely baked. So you have some prototype stage where you can show it to customers and get their feedback. And if customer doesn't like it, you have very minimal expense to iterate it or rebuild it, or even you can throw it away and go to a totally different design. So wireframe is one of the very common method of prototype, which is mostly used for software development. And if you are building, let's say, phone application or desktop application, you build the wireframes. There are some software available to build the wireframes, or you can even just take paper and pen and build the wireframes on them, on that, and show it to users. And then the last element of the process is the visual design. Visual design is the actual look and feel and output which you show it and work it with the customers. And in this one, you basically actually take the different controls, like the software elements and the controls, and build the user interface. and share it with the customer. Now at this stage, most of your usability design and prototype is complete, and this should be pretty much a final stage which you have. You can still get the feedback and you can still go through the iterative process, but at this point of time, if you are making any changes, it's more expensive for you to go back and change that. Okay. Rakesh, do we have any questions so far?
We don't.
Okay. So let's move on to the next step, which is the like there are some. So so in this slide we looked at the different design user experience design elements, those 5 phases. Now there are some design principles and guidelines when you are working through it. Uh, there are some principles. So like in your design, try to keep it simple. So when we say keep it simple, basically it's about clarity. Whatever content or whatever information you are putting it in front of your users, make sure that user can easily understand it, and it has a clear purpose. If you have some elements which doesn't add any value to the user, just remove it. Don't show it to the users. Only focus on the things which is important and solve some purpose for the user. Be human is basically putting yourself in the shoes of a user. So uh, if because you are interacting it with a user, think like them. Try to build the experience what they are looking for. Uh, so basically, like if you are the experience you are building. So if user is going on a screen, and let's say if you can autofill some of the information based on the information you have, autofill that and build that information for them, right? Provide context. So context, let's say you have a form which user need to fill with 5 different steps. If you provide, you should provide the context so that user know where they are right now and how far they need to go. If they don't have the context, it creates a curiosity for the user, like what the whole process looks like. So if you provide the context about where they are and where they need to go and how many steps are remaining, that helps them to plan ahead. Consistency is also very important. So if you have multiple screen, multiple pages, make sure that they all are very consistent. If you build the consistency in the system, then it's easier to navigate for the users and they can grasp the information very fast. So make sure that the consistency is there in all of your user designs. And then learn from the users. The learning from the users is the part of the usability study, where we talked about like how you can do the usability studies and surveys and collect the user feedback and learn from it and iterate your design to support the user needs. In interaction, so animation, there are many times like you see there are a lot of animation on the page. So animation is a good component of user design, but animation can be a lot of distraction as well. So when you are adding animation, make sure it solves some purpose and keep it very small and simple. And once it solves the purpose, remove the animation. So it should have a purpose. Keep it for very small durations. It should be very quick. And if it doesn't solve the purpose, don't include animation. Confirmation and undo is another interaction where when you are, let's say user is filling up a form and there is information which is critical, provide them confirmation. And uh, if when you click on a button and some information is not there, give them a message where they need to go back and fill it. If it's a critical information where user is going to override some of his information on the system, confirm them that, hey, this is going to change your information. Are you okay? And move forward. and give them ways to undo things. So if they did some information wrong, they provide them a way to go back and undo that information wherever you can. Easing data entry, that is where you should provide them like the auto completion type of thing. So when user types after a few letters, just auto complete the information if you have that. Group the related information together, like for if your customer is entering the address information, group them together so that it's easy to navigate uh, in there. The another thing, very common thing we have seen is like on the forms, when people are filling the form and they have, let's say, some text boxes, you are entering your first name, last name, and then you enter phone number. Now we know that phone number are 10 digits long. So when you enter first name, last name, you type in and then you press tab to move on to the next field. Now, many places we have seen that when people type in phone number and as soon as they type the 10th digit, it automatically takes them to the next cell or next field. Now, that's not a consistent design because it's automatically moving you forward to the next field, just the phone number, but rest of the fields keeping you to the same place. So keep it consistent across the board during the data entry so that all fields and user experience match with that. Multiple devices and sessions. So people again use different devices, and when they use different devices, they wanted to use the same state on different devices. So let's say if user is listening to a song on one device and then he goes back to the another device and open the same site, we need to retain his information that, hey, user was listening this song, so you can play the same song again right from where he left. So basically retaining the session information across devices, and when people switch devices, start from the same place. System response time is also very important. So uh, again, because we are interacting with humans. Humans have a mindset or psychology, like how much they can wait. So normally, let's say if you are building a form, building some UI, and the response user gets back within, let's say, less than 1 second, then you don't need to provide any specific response control to the users. But let's say if the response comes back between 1 to 10 seconds. So that's a long period which human mindset by default can absorb. So you need to show some kind of indicator that showing that it's coming, right? Maybe showing the overglass or something so that people know that its system is still processing the information. Now let's say if it takes even 10 seconds to 1 minute, for an example, you are doing some process, some download is happening which is going to take 30, 40, 50 seconds. In those cases, make sure you display some kind of percentage completion. And then the next one is, let's say if your process is taking even more than that, let's say it takes more than a minute to half an hour because you are installing some big component which need to download, install, configure your system, and then it will be done. In those cases, make sure that you have some kind of percentage completion. You are showing it there. Also have some kind of uh, some running commentary on the site where people can learn about your product and read something which keeps changing after every couple of minutes so that people are engaged while that process is going on. Also, when you have such a long process, make sure that people can go back to other things and do their tasks. And once process is complete, they can come back to your screen and finish the process. Now, also, you can provide some kind of auditory indicator. So when process is complete and it's running behind the scene, user might not know when it is complete. So you might have some kind of auditory indicator that, hey, application is installed, or your tab might start blinking that, hey, this process has complete, so it's looking for your attention. So those are some of the good component for you need to be you can you can incorporate for interaction design. Uh, in the layout, when you are building the layout, so grid control is one of the very common component for the layout. Basically, it controls the consistency and flow within your page using the grid layout. Uh, you can based on the grid layout, it automatically arranges your control in a very consistent and similar fashion, and as well as you can either flow from left to right or top to bottom, right? So you can design those things as part of your layout. The structure and navigation is some of the places you might see that like you might need multiple level of navigation. So you might have like main navigation on the top and the sub navigation on the left hand side, right? So make sure when you are building the multiple navigation, they are properly categorized and grouped together so that people can easily understand which navigation to use. So if the top navigation is a main navigation, then categories like your all categories should be very clear enough based on the context of your application. And once they select one particular top navigation, the left navigation might map to what you have selected as part of the top navigation. The commands, basically you can have multiple places. You might have command bars, you might have command menu, you might have inline command buttons. So when you are building these command buttons or command menu bars, make sure you label them appropriately and try to avoid any computer jargons as part of the while naming those commands. For an example, uh, like if you are submitting a form, at the place of calling it submit, which is more of a technical term, you can specify save, because the user is saving the information. So try to be user centric while naming those commands. For basically content is the main reason why user is there on your site. So and make sure that people can easily go through your content and there is a visual hierarchy so that it's easily navigable. For an example, like if you read the newspaper section or some news, you can use a specific font and color for, let's say, main headline, sub headline, and then content. So just use the proper visual structure to build that content and be consistent across the board, so that when people move from one page to another page, they can, by looking at the font and color, they can easily make it out that this is the headline versus this is the main text for that particular headline. And then responsive design basically uh, talks about the responsiveness when you move from, let's say, one device to other device or smaller screen to larger screen. Your UI should automatically adjust to that screen size. There are different patterns which you can use, like you can resize some of your content, or you can change the flow. So for an example, if you are using a monitor, you might have a more wider flow, but as soon as you switch to mobile device, you might have a more horizontal flow where you move the, let's say, 3 column content into 1 column content, right? So responsive design basically helps you to uh, to build your UI so that it's compatible with different screen sizes. Now, In the style, there are multiple things like you can control the color. So uh, use the color appropriately. Don't use too gaudy colors on your screens. Make sure that the color combination you are selecting is soothing for people, for users' eyes. And then use the correct visual indicators for those colors. For an example, red, yellow, and green is used for to showing, let's say, the status of your items. So make sure that if you are showing something red, that might directly user might interpret that as it's going negative, right? Or status is red means it's not going in the right direction, and green means it's all good. So uh, keep in mind when you are using the colors, like what user might interpret by that particular color. Then same way you can use like different font sizes and different text size. The flow of the text matters based on how you want to show it on your screen. The readability is also very important. So let's say if you have too much content to show it on the screen, and sometimes people tend to shrink the font size so that it might not be readable enough. So make sure that whatever font size you are using or color you are using, it's clearly visible on the screen and it's easily readable. If you have too much, don't just plug in too much content on the screen just because you have to have that much content. Icons are very useful. Like one of the good examples I can see is like when I see the list of documents, normally there is a icon left to it, and by just looking at the icon, I can easily figure it out if it's a Word document or PowerPoint or a Excel file. So, and most of the icons, like people know what those icons mean. So when you're using the icons, make sure they are very commonly used icons and people understand what they mean and use it at the right place where those icons are intended for. Now for the content, the tone and voice is basically to make sure that user understands what message you are trying to communicate. Some of the things you might want to be careful about in this is like if your application is, let's say, international application, then you want to make sure that some of the sentences might have or words might have different meanings in different regions. So make sure you look at your content and make sure it's acceptable across everywhere, right? Uh, so those are some of the things you can be careful about from the tone and voice. Try to be more pleasing and like start with the hello customer name, or be more pleasing to the and welcoming to the customer. For the help, again, like if you wherever you see like customer might get stuck and might need help in your UI design, provide them proper places for help where they can interact or get help from the users from the system. It can be a very like quick help where you might have some kind of tooltip where people can just look and get the help directly from there. But let's say if they were registering for your site and somehow the system is not accepting their information and they are completely stuck, so you can have different ways of like having online chat or phone call or something, right? That information available right there so that they can very easily get the help. And if something goes wrong with your system and user have to face some error messages, try to customize your error handling processes and basically give the appropriate error messages to the users when they get the error message. Be kind and helpful in your error messages and uh, try to convert them into more user-centric words. For an example, let's say if user is just searching for a file and it's not available, it should say something like the file is not available on the system, or uh, server is down, so it will be available in next 2 days, at the place of just throwing 500 error 500 on the screen. For the usability, so user-centric design is basically the same thing which we have talked about around keeping the user in the mind. So put yourself in the user's shoe and design your site for their needs. Accessibility is another big piece, and we will talk more about accessibility on the next slide, where we want to incorporate in our site for all type of users, including the disability needs, people with disability needs. And then globalization is for if you are building the application which is global, available across the world, then you want to make sure uh, like it's culturally appropriate, it's age appropriate, and if you have some content which is not age appropriate, make sure that you collect the user information who is looking for your content, and you only filter the content based on their age. uh, if your users are multilingual, then make sure that you have different language support as part of your system. And then there are different religious component which you should consider while building your user interface design. Okay, so so there are about 1 billion users who have some kind of accessibility needs. When you build your site which is accessible, it benefits everyone, not just those 1 billion users. So even for many other people, uh, they can get benefits from these. There are different ways of there are different accessible needs. For an example, like visual needs, where people might be colorblind or they have some low vision issues. For those, you can have like use high contrast themes. There are tools like magnifier and narrator, which you can use for visual impaired people. For people with hearing needs, or people who might be deaf, you can provide the translator as part of your solution. There are like you can provide some visual alerts, or maybe the closed caption as part of your speech. Or if you have video, you can provide the closed caption as part of it for hearing impaired people. There are cognitive learning disabilities. People might have learning disabilities, so you need to basically focus on specific content which people are looking for. Reduce the distraction on the page and just focus on one or two small things. You can provide features like quiet hours, where automatically you can cut down the different voices and just focus on the content. Then there is the other accessibility needs are like speech, where people might have some difficulties with the speech, mobility, and then the neural disabilities. For them, like there are speech recognition softwares or features which you can implement as part of your solution. You can also have like on-screen keyboards. On-screen keyboard are for some people are much easier to use than the actual external keyboard. So those are some of the features you can build into your application. This is like a summary of like just from high level, like what are different user rules, and you can remember them by this. Basically, understand your user needs, keep it simple. Try to be your UI to be simple and to the point. Consistency is very important across the board. Then remember that the content is why people are coming to your screen. You can use graphics and animation, but keep it to the minimal. Uh, then again, like if undo, provide the undo options for the users if users makes any mistakes. Get the feedback from the users and test your system properly before you make it available. uh, for the like navigation and button control, if you are adding it to the system, label them appropriately, and then allow them to cancel or undo some operations if user is halfway through and they don't want to continue move forward. Okay, so these are some user rules which can be very handy when you are building your user design. Okay, in next couple of slides, basically, I will cover some of the content which is part of your architecture design document. So these are some of the models which, when you are doing your exercise, uh, you can incorporate this as part of your presentation. So content model is part of the information architecture which we discussed as part of user experience elements, and this is where you can store the content, the information in your system. So you will have some different fields, and then based on the information you define different types for the fields, and you define the relations between these objects, right? Process diagram is part of the interaction design, and where you define the process, how your system works and system behaves. So for an example, like you might have a login process. Once you go onto the login screen, there might be if user might not have already registered, so from your login screen you should have an option to either go to the register if it's a new user, or if user has forgotten his password, you want to have a forgot password button where user can go and reset their password from there, right? And then there is a flow for let's say for login process. If user enters the password correctly, then take them forward. If not, then give them 3 tries, and if user still fails for 3 tries, then lock his account. So make sure that you have the proper flow and process designed for your UIs. Sitemap shows basically this is the list of all the pages. If you are building a website or mobile application, this is like a catalog or list of all the pages and the relations between them. So as part of the sitemap, you build the hierarchy of like grouping of all the pages and how they relate to each other. Okay. Wireframe diagrams we talked about as part of the prototype. Basically, it shows the different UI element like different text images, button, and how they different links on the screen. It doesn't have to be the actual final solution. It's just a wireframe to show like how the system will look like or interact from one place to another place, or one screen to another screen. But visually it doesn't have to be accurate how it will be the final product. And you do that mainly to build a prototype and get the quick feedback from the customer and iterate through it, so that you can improve your UI design, and it helps you to build the final product. And flow diagram is for the UI screen flows. So like in this example, you can see like the flow goes starting from the login screen. So firstly you display the login screen. After the user logs in, he goes to one of the landing page where they can either search the different items. Once they search the item and they find a item, it takes them to the product, the item details page, where they can see more information about that particular item, the description, price, different colors, all the information about that product. And you might have a back button to go back to the list of the products if you want to, if customer want to. And once customer selects a particular product and he clicks on like uh, buy button, or he want to buy the product, takes them to the add that product to the order. Then from there you can give them two options: either go back to the shopping and add more products, or uh, show go to the order summary page where they can finalize the order and make the payment, right? So this is like you build the flow diagrams for your solution from end to end. Uh, and those are like 5 or 6 components which are listed as part of your architecture document. So when you are building uh, your user experience and interface design, then you can use these concepts and build your UI design. And then there are some references you can use where you can find more information about this user experience design and overall user experience. That's all I have. Rakesh, do we have any questions?
Uh, Nobody has asked any question yet. That means you explained it pretty well. Anybody, if you have any question, please put it in the question or raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. Anyone? Any question? Cricket? So I don't think anyone has any questions. So good job, Kamal.
Thank you.
That was well explained.
Thanks. I hope it is useful, and uh, people can use this information and build a excellent presentation and win the competition.
Yep, we hope so. All right. Jacob said thank you for presenting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. We will have another webinar this Friday at 6 p.m. So we'll see you all back on Friday. Take care.
Bye.